Hello, this is the continuance of P G Wodehouse's Jeeves and the Feudal Spirit, and we're picking up at chapter 8. The days that followed saw me at the peak of my form, fizzy to an almost unbelievable extent and enchanting one and all with my bright smile and merry sallies. During the halcyon period, if halcyon is the word I want, it would not be too much to say that I revived like a watered flower. It was as if a great weight had been rolled off the soul. Only those who have to endure the ordeal of having G. Darcy Cheesewhite constantly materialise from thin air and steal up behind them, breathing down the back of their necks as they took their ease in the smoking room, can fully understand the relief of being able to sink into a chair and order a restorative, knowing that the place would be wholly free from this preeminent scourge. My feelings, I suppose, were roughly what those of Mary would have been had she looked over her shoulder one morning and found the lamb no longer among those present. And then, bing! Just as I was saying to myself that this was the life, along came all those telegrams. The first to arrive reached me at my residence just as I was lighting the after-breakfast cigarette, and I eyed it with something of the nervous discomfort of one confronted with a ticking bomb. Telegrams have so often been the heralds or harbingers of, or whatever they're called, of sharp crises in my affairs that I have come to look on them with askance, wondering if something is going to pop out of the envelope and bite me in the leg. It was with a telegram, it may be recalled, that fate teed off in the sinister episode of Sir Watkin Bassett, of Roderick Spode and the Silver Cow Creamer, which I was instructed by Aunt Dahlia to pinch from the first names collection at Totley Towers. Little wonder then that, as I brooded over this one, eyeing it, as I say, askance, I was asking myself if hell's foundations were about to quiver again. Still, there the thing was, and it seemed to me, weighing the pros and cons, that only one course of action lay before me, viz., to open it. I did so. Handed in at Winkley-cum-Snodsfield in the Marsh, it was signed Twavers. This revealing it as the handiwork either of Aunt Dahlia or Thomas P. Twavers, her husband, a pleasant old bird whom she had married at her second pop some years earlier. From the fact that it started with the words, "Bertie, you worm," I deduced that it was the former who had taken post office pen in hand. Uncle Tom is more guarded in his speech than the female of the species. He generally calls me boy. This was the substance of the communication. "Bertie, you worm! Your early presence desired. Drop everything and come down here pronto. Prepared for lengthy visit. Urgently need you to buck up a blighter with whiskers. Love, Trappers." I brooded over this for the rest of the morning, and on my way to lunch at the Dwones shot off my answer, a brief request for more light. "Did you say whiskers or whiskey? Love, Wooster." I found another from her on returning. "Whiskers, ass! The son of a whatnot has short but distinct side whiskers. Love, Travers." It's an odd thing about memory. It so often just fails to spare the desired object. At the back of my mind there was dodging about a hazy impression that somewhere at some time I heard someone mention short side whiskers in some connection, but I couldn't pin it down. It eluded me. So, pursuing the sound old policy of going to the fountainhead for information, I stepped out and dispatched the following. What short side whiskered son of a whatnot would this be, and why does he need bucking up? Why are full details, as at present, fogged, bewildered, and mystified? Love, Wooster. she replied with a generous warmth which causes so many of her circle to hold on to their hats when she lets herself go. "Listen, you foul blot! What's the idea of making me spend a fortune on telegrams like this? Do you think I made of money? Never you mind what short-side-whiskered son of a whatnot it is, or why he needs bucking up. You just come as I tell you and look slippy about it. Oh, by the way, go to Aspinall's in Bond Street and get pearl necklace of mine that they have there and bring it down with you. Have you got that? Aspinall's, Bond Street, pearl necklace. Shall expect you tomorrow. Love, Travers." A little shaking, but still keeping the flag flying, I responded with the ensuing. "Fully grasp all that Aspinall's Bond Street pearl necklace stuff, but what you are overlooking is that coming to Brinkley at present juncture not so jolly simple as you seem to think. There are complications and whatnot. Wills within wills, if you get what I mean. Whole thing calls for deep thought. Will weigh matter carefully and let you know decision. Love, Wooster." You see, though Brinkley Court is a home from home and gets 5 stars in Baedeker as the headquarters of Monsieur Anadole, Aunt Dahlia's French cook, a place in short to which in ordinary circs I race when invited with a whoop and a holler, it had taken me but an instant to spot that under existing conditions there were grave objections to going there. I need scarcely say that I allude to the fact that Florence was on the premises and Stilton expected shortly. It was this that was giving me pause. Who could say that the latter, finding me in residence on his arrival, would not leap to the conclusion that I had rolled up in pursuit of the former like young Lochinvar coming out of the west? And should this thought flit into his mind, what, I asked myself, would be the harvest? His parting words about my spine were still green in my memory. I knew him to be a man rather careful in his speech, on whose promises one could generally rely. And if he said he was going to break spines in 4 places, you could be quite sure that 4 places was precisely what he would break them into. I passed a restless and an easy evening, in no mood for revelry at the Drones. I returned home early and was washing up on my mystery of the pink crayfish when the telephone rang. And so disordered was the nervous system that I shot ceilingwards at the sound. It was as much as I could do to totter across the room and unhook the receiver. The voice that floated over the wire was that of Aunt Dahlia. Well, when I say floated, possibly thundered would be more the mot just. A girlhood and early womanhood spent in chivying the British fox in all weathers under the auspices of the Quorn and Pitchley have left this aunt brick-red in colour and lent amazing power to her vocal cords. I've never pursued foxes myself, but apparently when you do, you put in a good bit of your time shouting across ploughed fields in a high wind, and this becomes a habit. If Aunt Dahlia has a fault, it is that she is inclined to talk to you when face-to-face in a small drawing-room as if she were addressing some crony a quarter of a mile away whom she has observed riding over hounds. For the rest, she is a large, jovial soul, built rather on the lines of Mae West, and is beloved by all, including the undersigned. Our relations had always been chummy to the last drop. "Hello, hello, hello!" she boomed. The old hunting stuff coming to the service, you notice. "Is that you, Bertie, darling?" I said that it was none other. "Then what's the idea, you half-witted Gadarene swine, of all this playing hard to get? You and your matter weighing, I've never heard such nonsense in my life. You've got to come here and immediately if you don't want an aunt's curse delivered on your doorstep by return of post. If I have to cope unaided with that ruddy Percy any longer, I shall crack beneath a strain." She paused to take in breath, and I put a question. "Is Percy the whiskered bloke?" "That's the one! He's casting a thick ball of gloom over the place. It's like living in a fog. Tom says if something isn't done soon, he will take steps." "But what's the matter with the chap?" "He's madly in love with Florence Cray." "Oh, I see, and it depresses him to think that she's engaged to Stilton Cheesewhite." "Exactly! He's as sick as mad about it. He moons broodingly to and fro, looking like Hamlet. I want you to come and divert him. Take him for walks, dance before him, tell him funny stories, anything to bring a smile to that whiskered tortoise-shell-rimmed face. I saw her point, of course. No hostess wants a Hamlet on the premises, but what I couldn't understand was how a chap like that came to be polluting the pure air of Winkley. I knew the old relative to be quite choosy in the matter of guests. Cabinet ministers have sometimes failed to quash the gate. I put this to her, and she said the explanation was perfectly simple. I told you I was in the middle of a spot of business with Trotter. I've got the whole family here. Percy's stepfather, L.G. Trotter, Percy's mother, Mrs. Trotter, and Percy in person. I only wanted Trotter, but Mrs. T and Percy ran themselves in. I see. What they call a package deal. I broke off aghast. Memory has returned to its throne, and I knew now why that stuff about short side whiskers had seemed to have a familiar ring. Trotter! I cried. She whooped censorously. Don't yell like that! You nearly broke my eardrum! But did you say Trotter? Of course I said Trotter! This Percy's name isn't Gorringe. That's what it unquestionably is. He admits it. Then I'm frightfully sorry, old thing, but I can't possibly come. It was only the other day that the above Gorringe was trying to nick me for £1,000 to put into this play he's made of Florence's book, and I turned him down like a bedspread. You can readily see then how fraught with embarrassment a meeting in the flesh would be. I shouldn't know which way to look. If that's all that's worrying you, forget it. Florence tells me that he has raised that 1,000 elsewhere. Well, I'm dashed. Where did he get it? She doesn't know. She's secretive about it. He just said it was all right, he had got the stuff, and they could go ahead. So you needn't be shy about meeting him. Whatever he thinks, he does think you the world's premier louse. Don't we all? Something in that. Then you'll come? I chewed the lower lip dubiously. I was thinking of Stoughton. Well, speak up, dumbbell, said the relative with asperity. What's all the silence about? I was musing. Then stop musing and give me the good word. If it will help to influence your decision, I may mention that Anatole is at the top of his form just now. I started. If this was so, it would clearly be madness not to be one of the company ranged around the festive board. I have touched so far only lightly on Miss Anatole, and I take the opportunity now of saying that his was an output which had to be tasted to be believed. Mere words being inadequate to convey the full facts with regard to his amazing virtuosity. After one of Anatole's lunches has melted in the mouth, you unbutton the waistcoat and loll back, breathing heavily and feeling that life has no more to offer. And then, before you know where you are, along comes one of his dinners, with even more on the ball. The whole layout constituting something about as near heaven as any reasonable man could wish. I felt, accordingly, that no matter how vehemently Stilton might express and fulfil himself on discovering me, well, not perhaps exactly cheek by jowl with the woman he loved, but certainly hovering in her vicinity, the risk of rousing the fiend within him was one that must be taken. It cannot ever, of course, be agreeable to find yourself torn into 1,000 pieces, with a 14-stone Othello doing a shuffle off the buffalo on the scattered fragments. But if you are full at the time of Anatole's timbale de ris de vue to le sein, that discomfort unquestionably becomes modified. I'll come, I said. Good boy! With you taking Percy off my neck, I shall be free to concentrate on Trotter, and every ounce of concentration will be needed if I'm to put this deal through. What is the deal? You never told me. Who is this Trotter, if any? I met him at Agatha's. He's a friend of hers. He owns a lot of papers up in Liverpool, wants to establish a beachhead in London, so I'm trying to get him to buy the boudoir. I was amazed. Absolutely the last thing I would have expected. I had always supposed milady's boudoir to be her ewe lamb. To learn that she contemplated selling it stunned me. It was like hearing that Rogers had decided to sell Hammerstein. But why on earth? I thought you loved it like a son. I do! But the strain of having to keep going to Tom and trying to get money out of him for its support has got me down. Every time I start pleading with him for another cheque, he says, "But isn't it paying its way yet?" And I say, "No, darling, it's not paying its way yet." And he says, adding to that, "If this sort of thing goes on, we shall be all on the dole by next Christmas. It's become too much for me. It makes me feel like one of those women who lug babies around the streets and want you to buy white heather." So, when I met Trotter at Agatha's, I decided that he was a man who was going to take over, if human ingenuity could work it. What did you say? I said, "Oh, and I was about to add that it was a pity." Yes, quite a pity, but unavoidable. Tom gets more difficult to touch daily. Says he loves me dearly, but enough is sufficient. Well, I'll expect you tomorrow then. Don't forget the necklace. I'll send Jeeves over for it in the morning. Right! I think she would have spoken further, but at this moment a female voice off stage said 3 minutes, and she hung up with a sharp cry of a woman who fears she is going to be soaked for another couple of bob, or whatever it is. Jeeves came trickling in. "Oh, Jeeves," I said, "we shall be heading for Winkley tomorrow." "Oh, very good, sir." "Aunt Dahlia wants me there to infuse a bit of the party spirit in our old pal Percy Gorringe, who is at the moment infesting the joint." "Indeed, sir. I wonder, sir, if it would be possible for you to allow me to return to London next week for the afternoon." "Certainly, Jeeves, certainly. You'll have some Beano in prospect?" "It is the monthly luncheon of the Junior Ganymede Club, sir. I have been asked to take the chair." "Take it, by all means, Jeeves. A well-deserved honour." "Thank you, sir. I shall, of course, return the same day." "You'll make a speech, no doubt." "Yes, sir. A speech from the chair is of the essence." "I'll bet you have them rolling in the aisles. Oh, Jeeves, I was nearly forgetting. Aunt Dahlia wants me to bring her necklace. It's at Aspinall's in Bond Street. Will you toddle over and get it in the morning?" "Certainly, sir." "And another thing I almost forgot to mention. Percy has raised that £1,000. "Indeed, sir?" "He must have approached someone with a more biteable ear than mine. One wonders who the mug was." "Yes, sir." "Some half-wit, one presumes." "No doubt, sir." "Still, there it is. It just bears out what the late Barnum used to say about there being one born every minute." "Precisely, sir. Would that be all, sir?" "Yes, that's all. Good night, Jeeves." "Good night, sir. I will attend to the packing in the morning."